Okay, to begin the paper piecing, you'll have included in your kit, you will have almost an entire image of the girl, which we'll use for her snowsuit, and then one of just her hat, and we're going to use this for the top portion of her hat. So you'll go ahead and cut them out, and they'll look like this. You'll have the snowsuit, and I've cut her gloves out of it, as you notice right there, and her boots off and her scarf off. Okay, and for the hat, the same thing. The tassels are off, the brim is off, like that. All right. Now, what I like to do when I paper piece sometimes, especially if I'm going to this much trouble to make a card, I want to make sure that it's perfect, or as perfect as possible. And so I like to use a black marker to go over the line. Cut right on the black line when you're cutting, and then you can use this marker. And what I do is I like to come up from behind. That way if my marker slips, it slips behind the paper and not in front of the paper. If you're coming down like this, you could get on the paper. I learned that tip from someone. I want to say it was a Lawn Fawn blog one time that I read that on. So I'm just going to color that real quick along the edges here. And this is optional. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. Okay, and then to glue that on, I usually like to either use, either run these little pieces through a Xyron or just use a glue pen. I'll use a glue pen here, and I'll put the glue onto the card, and I'll just sort of dot it, because this is a really wet glue pen. If yours is not quite as wet, you might need a little more than this. But I'll go ahead and do her snowsuit, and then when I come down, at least I'm not putting glue where I don't want it. And then just sort of move it till you get it in the right spot. These pieces aren't too small, so I don't know that I need tweezers, but if you find that tweezers are helpful, that is great. Then I'm going to put her hat up here. And there we go. The last thing, if you want to color the little heart on her jacket, you can do that with either the R20, and then if you want it a little darker, you could always go R22. I can't decide which I like better. I'm going to leave it plain for now and see what I decide later. Now you'll have your two finished girls, and we're going to put the embossing around the outside of it. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use this embossing folder. It's, I believe it's called Polka Dot by Cuttlebug. It's just a lot of little pin dots, which I like to use for a lot of things. It just gives a nice simple texture. The other thing we're going to use is this embossing diffuser, and this is a Sizzix Tim Holtz creation. Came out a couple years ago. And what it will do, since there's a hole in it, as you use this instead of your top cutting plate, and it will create this diffused embossed look because it won't apply any pressure to the inside of the image. So we'll go ahead and put our little girl into the folder completely. Okay, we go ahead and start by putting our girl inside of our embossing folder. And just make sure the entire image is inside the polka dots. You know, if you want your polka dots a little cattywampus, that's fine. And then I'm going to put the diffuser on top of it. And I'm going to just sort of center the diffuser on the image. If I put it here, then she'll get some dots on the top of her head. And there won't be any dots down here there. So I'm going to just center her. Put her through my Big Kick. And you'll notice I'm just using my Genius platform, the embossing folder, and the diffuser. There is no top cutting mat on this at all. And I slide her through there. She comes out the other end, and when I open it up, she'll be embossed just on the outside and not on the inside. And I'm going to repeat that for the other girl as well. If you ordered the kit, I will have already done this embossing for you, as you may not have the supplies necessary to do that at home. So, again, there we have the embossing there, and she's left unembossed. Our next step will be to create her little tassels here, and we're going to use that. We're going to use some thicker baker's twine, and I'm going to double it up and tie some knots and get it to fringe out a little bit. So you'll take the piece that was supplied and you will fold it in half so that it's a double thickness. And then what I want you to do is go ahead and tie 2 knots, one here and one here. I'll show you that now. And the only reason I'm doing it this way is because it's a little easier than tying 2 little bitty knots on 2 small little pieces. Now we're just going to trim them. I'm going to cut this one right here. And then I'm going to cut it in the middle, and you'll get something that looks like that. We'll then glue the little knot right here on the edge, and then we'll just kind of fringe it out. Okay, so I have a little bit of glossy accents just right here, and we're going to stick the little knots on. And don't worry about the fringe being perfect length or anything right now. Tighten the knots if you have to. Okay. Now let that dry. Once it's dry, I take either the tip of my tweezers, or if you've got another little small thing that can separate all these strings, and I'm just brushing it through, essentially separating each of those little pieces of twine to give it more of a tasseled look. That one's not quite dry yet, but just push it back down. And there you go. There are her tassels. All that remains is to assemble our cards. And we'll start with this one, our little pink girl first. And she belongs with the card that opens in this direction, as we're going to tie a ribbon around the card down here. So go ahead and have it opening at the top, and you're going to put the pink down, centering it. And then you're going to put her down and center her on these 3 lines here, and leave a larger area at the bottom. We'll put a ribbon on that to cover up that larger area. Okay, I have all 3 of these pieces stuck together now, and I'm going to use my favorite trick from Jennifer McGuire, which is to tie this ribbon using a little hole. So I think I'm going to use the larger size hole. And I'm going to put the hole where I want the bow to be, which is apparently right there. We're going to come up from the bottom, and we'll leave enough to tie a bow. Then we're going to wrap all the way around the card and come back up through the bottom. And what you want to do now is just see that you have 2 even or close to even pieces right there. And we will tie them in a knot first. It will secure our ribbon, and then a bow. And she's finished. Oh, well, I guess we'll trim the ends of the ribbon. To finish our last card, we're going to first put down the turquoise paper, and you should apply it with some foam adhesive so it raises it up off of the bottom of the card, and we can slide this thicker ribbon underneath it. And then just slide the ribbon in between. You want to just leave this over here to the side. You could, if you wanted to, just tie a small knot just to get it out of your way. Then again, you want some foam adhesive on the back of this, and leave this area clear of adhesive so that it sits over the ribbon nicely. And attach it to your card. We're just going to tie this in a small bow. And you notice I have flagged ends. You can flag them or just cut them at an angle. And there's our final card. I hope you enjoyed taking this class, and we'll see you next month.